Welcome back and Happy New Year. Former gubernatorial and presidential candidate Perry Johnson talks about the problems in his Republican Party. Our lead story, new polling data in the Democratic U.S. Senate race. Who's on first? On the OTR panel, Kyle Malin, Emily Lawler, and Chad Livengood. Sit in with us as we get the inside out. Off the Record.
Production of Off the Record is made possible in part by Martin Waymeyer, a full-service strategic communications agency, partnering with clients through public relations, digital marketing, and public policy engagement. Learn more at martinwaymeyer.com. And now, this edition of Off the Record with Tim Skubic.
Well, everybody's in a good mood. Happy New Year. Nice to have all of you on board and to have you back in our Studio C as we look at Off the Record in This Week in the News. And the polling data in the U.S. Senate race vis-a-vis the Democrats, Kyle, is kind of interesting vis-a-vis Ms. Slotkin and Mr. Harper.
Well, we have public policy polling, did some polling for a progressive outfit this past week, came out that Hill Harper is at 12% and Alyssa Slotkin is at 50%. And there's two other Democrats that were polled as part of that. Leslie Love got 3%. Nasser Baydoun got 2%. But as you're taking a look at favorability, unfavorability, this is, of course, among Democratic voters. Alyssa Slotkin's numbers are way up. Hill Harper, 18% favorable, 9% unfavorable, the rest undecided. If he's got money in the bank and he's ready to spend, he's got to let people know who he is.
All right, before we continue, let me ask, have you ever talked to Hill Harper personally?
I have not.
Have you? Mm-mm. Have you?
Yeah, he was on our podcast once.
You did? Okay, mm-hmm. So you actually got to him?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Where has he been?
Well, he hasn't always been a full-time resident of Detroit. He because of his show, The Good Doctor on ABC, he tapes that thing in like Vancouver and lives in Seattle at the time, or travels back and forth. And so, you know, he's a working actor, so he's not always in the state. But where he is out on the campaign trail, they're not advertising it very much. I mean, he pops up every once in a while. You see things, or he's at some dinner or chicken dinner or barbecue or something, but that's what a lot of politicians do.
Sort of shades of James Craig. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I don't know if it's that. James Craig had a hard time leaving Wayne County at times, and so. But when he ran for governor, and you know, by all accounts, he's still having a hard time getting outside of that bubble.
Ms. Lawler.
Yeah, you know, I think that if you're looking at those numbers as Alyssa Slotkin, you can't be disappointed. I mean, to be on the bubble of a plurality and a majority in a four-way poll this far ahead of the election is certainly impressive. And I think, honestly, it reflects just getting in that early. You know, I think there's no question that she sort of scared off some potentially good candidates. There's still some in the pool, but to be polling this far ahead is pretty promising, I think.
Yeah, there's just no name recognition yet for Hill Harper. I mean, what is he doing? I mean, we'll find out with the next campaign finance report if he's raising money. That's what he should be doing. I've been getting emails from him trying to get pitches for money and so forth, and we'll see if that's bearing fruit. But as you look at folks like Curtis Sertel, who's running for Congress, they're all sitting at the phone dialing for dollars, waiting until the spring, and then they start getting a bit more visible. But at this point, you know, he's starting pretty far behind.
I remember Carl Levin talking about this. He said, Timmy, you know, I'm spending 60 to 70% of my time on the phone raising money. And he said, I don't like it. But that's the reality, isn't it?
No, that's a big part of the job. And if you're not willing to do that, then you usually don't go very far, or don't get out of the stall very easily.
All right, let's turn the page and look at the Menard story. Bring people up to speed on this as it relates to the former Speaker, Mr. Chatfield.
Yes, so just before Christmas, the Attorney General, Dana Nessel, charged the former Chief of Staff, Rob Menard, Chief of Staff to Lee Chatfield when he was Speaker, and his wife, Annie Menard, who was Director of External Affairs, who also was sort of the gatekeeper to the Lee Chatfield multi-million-dollar fundraising juggernaut that we saw in this town for a few years. He charged him with bilking about $500,000 out of a whole variety of different nonprofit accounts, the so-called social welfare funds, 501c4s that are proliferated in this town, and then also some campaign funds as well. Essentially, they're alleged to have run an embezzlement scheme where they would double bill, they would take reimbursements, and they would have other funds reimburse the same bill. Essentially, there was a whole host of schemes of ways that they turned these campaign accounts into cash cows, essentially. They did not charge the former speaker himself. The Attorney General said there was still more work being done in the investigation, but signaled that the investigation would be wrapped up early this year.
They, of course, pleaded not guilty.
Correct. But, I think that this has opened up a lot of questions. We've had these C4 social welfare organizations sort of operating in the background of our official campaign dollars for a long time now. And I think that, the Attorney General got insight into the C4 to make these comparisons and find out that, allegedly some of the reporting going on the official accounts was sort of contradicting or double billed with some of these 501c4s. But, we lack that transparency on a daily basis. Not only can journalists not identify similar problems, but, several candidates allegedly sort of got bilked through this scheme in a way that they would never be able to tell with information that's publicly available.
And we wouldn't have known about it had the Attorney General not been asked to look into it by Rebecca Chatfield, who had accused Lee Chatfield of sexual improprieties, of grooming her back when she was a teenager. And she said, oh, by the way, you should look into this. I think something funny's going on. So the Attorney General took a look at Lee Chatfield's bank records, has been taking a look at the Menards, did a raid of their house and took a look. And had that not happened, Dana Nessel would have never looked into this in the first place, because there is no real oversight over these 501c4s, these administrative accounts. So numerous accounts can be established, and these people who are running these accounts can go to this law firm and say, hey, we'd really like this money, or this PAC, and say, hey, we'd really like money for that. It could be for the same exact thing, and nobody would really know.
Let's be clear here. This is not unique to the Speaker's office. There's a chilling effect, I would think, this case would have on everybody in this town that's got one of these things that is not disclosing. And you might think, you know what, to get ahead of the curve here, maybe I ought to disclose what's in this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there could be still a lot of collateral damage in this town. I mean, what these charges against Menards expose, for example, is that there was a 501c4 run by 3 prominent lobbyists in this town who, with the House Republicans, could essentially submit receipts for stuff, and then they would just pay them back. And Andy Menard figured out ways, allegedly, to basically steal this money. The idea that the lobbyists who have to disclose if they pay for a meal for Lee Chatfield, but then they can essentially have a little fun here on the side where you can just go over here and you don't have to have this disclosed because it's a social welfare organization.
Whatever the heck that is, right?
It's completely corrupted the whole concept of this. And they do this outside of the campaign finance law, outside of the lobbying law, and it's run by lobbyists. I mean, what could possibly go wrong?
I think that just to give you an idea of scope, I think that Craig Mauger and I are the only ones to have done a full scope of the legislature at one point. And a few years ago, we connected either these 501c4s or 527s operating in basically as an unregistered, not registered as PACs, to I believe a third of lawmakers at the time, and that was just the ones we could figure out. So I do sort of think that this is way more prevalent than people realize and sort of operates as a shadow system behind what you're seeing in official campaign finance documents.
So the question is this on the agenda in the new year to be addressed by the lawmakers who are just coming off of the so-called reforms on disclosure?
Well, I'm not holding my breath.
How long can you hold it?
You're a smart man.
It would seem like this would be a perfect atmosphere to do it. A 54-54 split in the House. Nobody has real majority right now. There's been talk about an ethics panel for some years. In the last campaign cycle, the Democrats brought this up as a campaign item. But then since they've been in the majority, I don't know if they've uttered Lee Chatfield's name one time, because now they're in charge and they can take advantage of the exact same vehicles Lee Chatfield took advantage of when he was Speaker. So do the Democrats want to create a system now to unravel the very mechanism that they themselves could be using? I don't know. I'm skeptical, and I think we all are a little cynical on that.
Let's not say could be using, are using. Senate Majority Leader Winnie Brinks went to Brazil on a trip with this. Craig Mauger reported that Senate Appropriations Chair Sarah Anthony acknowledged that she went on a trip to Israel as a state rep, paid for by something that Lee Chatfield used. Doesn't even know how it got paid for. Just went to a trip to Israel, and Lee Chatfield took care of it as the speaker. I mean, this is how untransparent this is. And then lastly, Governor Gretchen Whitmer raised $13 million with a 501c4 that she turned around and gave the money to an entity controlled by the Democratic Governors Association. They used that money to help Governor Gretchen Whitmer win re-election. This is a complete end around of the campaign finance law. Both sides are using it, and it really is hard to believe that even a 54-54 House is going to come up with the courage to take this away or put transparency on this.
Excuse me. Speaking of unraveling, quickly, Emily, the Republicans are supposedly going to meet on Saturday to oust the current chairwoman.
Correct. It's going to require perhaps a rule change first, and there's already arguments over whether this meeting is properly called.
She says it's illegal.
We'll see. I guess we'll see how that turns out. We've seen courts have to decide essentially in Macomb County. There's a case pending in Saginaw County right now. There's been a kerfuffle in Hillsdale County. I really think that the GOP is having a very hard time deciding who's in charge right now.
All right. So the question is for the people out in TV land, so what?
Well, it would just seem like palace intrigue, except that we have a presidential selection process here in Michigan where that is going to be directly impacted by this. Because the primary is scheduled for February 27, and that is before the Republicans nationally will accept a primary date, the Republicans have to have a separate presidential delegate selection process, and they've scheduled that for March 2, and that's held by the party. So if we have an issue about who's actually the chair and who's actually control of the party and who is officially the Michigan Republican Party, which is where this looks like this is heading, then who is actually selecting the presidential delegates for Michigan? I mean, we probably can assume that whether it's Karamo or the anti-Karamo people, they'll probably both pick Donald Trump delegates. But who's delegates? And who gets to select it? Ronna Romney McDaniel at the RNC. She gets to decide, is it going to be the Karamo delegates or the anti-Karamo delegates? I think this is unfortunately where we're headed.
It could spill out into a floor fight in Milwaukee at the National Convention in July. And so that there's a whole host of problems that could transpire here if we don't know who's really in charge of the Michigan Republican Party.
Well, let's assume, and it's not a safe assumption, that there is a vacancy and that they will remove her. Who would want the job, please?
Oh, there's people that want that job. Yeah.
I
think plenty of folks in Michigan politics that want that job.
But they have to get around the Trump people in the party. And those people that you're talking about are not Trumpers. Is that not correct?
Hoekstra? Pete Hoekstra was an ambassador to Donald Trump. So.
Yeah, but is he a true believer?
Well, I mean, there's always going to be a purity test when it comes to the Trumpers. So,
how about Matt DePerno? Is he interested in this thing?
I don't know. I haven't heard that.
He wasn't he before?
Yeah, kind of a low profile. He's also going on trial in March. So for tampering with tabulators allegedly. So maybe he's not the person they want.
I heard Ryan Berman's name. Former candidate for Attorney General, possibility. But I think Pete Hoekstra actually wants the job. And I think Scott Greenlee, who had run for the job, is supporting Pete Hoekstra.
All right, let's call in our guest today, Perry Johnson, former candidate for governor, former candidate for president. Good morning, Mr. Johnson. Welcome back to Off the Record. How you doing?
Fantastic. How are you doing?
Couldn't be better. All right. I know politicians hate theoretical and hypothetical questions, but let's go there anyway. All right. Let's say the presidential election is out of the way, the new administration is in, and the Republicans head up to Mackinac Island for the leadership conference. Number one, are you going?
I will probably be going.
And number two, will you say, I'm interested in running for governor?
I doubt that I'm going to be saying that I'm going to run for governor this early. That would be kind of nutty. Everybody's going to be focusing on the presidential race, period.
Yeah, now, I understand, but I want to get past that to what you're going to do, because you failed at governor before, you failed at president. Why would you want to run for governor?
Well, that's actually a very good question. Understand right now, I think it's this next week, the forgers that went out, that is the petitioners that went out there to get the forged signatures, are going on trial. And it is unfortunate that they kicked, I guess, 5 of us off the ballot. But the governor race didn't exactly go badly for me, other than the fact that they never let me on the ballot. I had been running for a couple of months, and I guess I was in second place 2 months later behind Chief Craig. And then later on, at the time of the election, when they actually knocked us off, it isn't clear whether Chief Craig was ahead or I was ahead. The presidential race was kind of interesting. We all know that in the presidential race, the decision is made based on how you do on the debate stage. But this was a very interesting sort of situation where I had 5 national polls at 1% or higher, and they decided to exclude all of them. So although they accepted the Trafalgar poll, they said McLaughlin wasn't any good. They said that Victory Strategic wasn't any good. They said that the Harris poll wasn't any good, the Harvard-Harris poll, the Caravan poll wasn't any good. And they systematically, Emerson poll wasn't any good. So they systematically decided over there at the RNC that they were going to exclude certain polls.
Mr. Johnson, before I first turn over to my colleagues, I need a story here. Okay, do you still have the bug to be governor?
I do. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the campaigning, and most importantly, you can't just say because politics is a little tough, you're going to get out of the game, because maybe your message can get heard. And my message was always very simple. I think the government spends too much money, and I think we're going broke. We are $33 trillion in debt. At this point, I think it's closer to 34, and it's getting kind of ridiculous that we spend so much money and yet we pay no attention to this, and it creates a problem here. The only reason that we have inflation is that the government decided to spend too much money.
All right, let's see what Emily has to say.
You've called the RNC corrupt, I think, in reference to some of those policies and procedures you were talking about earlier. Why endorse Donald Trump, who many would argue is the person that some of those RNC procedures are designed to benefit?
Well, I'm not sure that the RNC procedures that they had limiting the people on the debate stage was designed in favor of Donald Trump. I think it was just the opposite, actually. I think what Ronna wanted to do was to get very, very few people against Trump so that he could go one-on-one against them. It's just that when you take a look at the candidates that were out there and their positions compared to Trump, there was no question that Trump appeared to have the superior position. And when you take a look at the nomination process, Trump never even had a debate, and he's still over 50%. There's almost no question in my mind that he is going to win the nomination.
What would have happened, Mr. Johnson, had you been on the debate stage? Do you think you would have made an impact?
I think my message would have gotten across, yes.
Do you think you would be in a position where you could challenge Trump? Do you think you could have put yourself in a position to actually challenge Trump?
Well, I do believe that if I had been on the debate stage, we'd had an entirely different scenario than we have right now. I do believe that. And I think that the only way that you can really see whether or not a person's position makes any sense is to get them on the stage. And you have to shoot questions at them, and they have to be able to answer them. And you learn a lot about a person's personality, their thinking, their mind, whether or not they really are that person when they're on that stage. Otherwise, you're just looking at a bunch of commercials.
Perry, we talked about the Michigan Republican Party and the sort of power struggle right now going on. Do you think Kristina Karamo is doing a good job? And if not, do you think she needs to step down?
Well, I'm going to ask you a very simple question. What do you think is the major role of the person in charge of the party? The number one function?
Raise money.
That's it, exactly. No question about it. In fact, you were talking about that earlier in your segment.
Sure.
You have to be able to raise money because They have no money given to them other than donations. So then we take a look at how well are we doing. Well, bottom line is we are now $600,000 in debt, and we are told that there's $71,000 in the bank. Now, this is not exactly the ideal situation that the Republicans want if they hope to do something in this upcoming election, because they have to spend money to get the vote out. They have to spend money to get behind the cause. And without money, elections cannot be won. I, for one, can tell you that it's very expensive. I spend quite a lot of money on both.
So should she go?
Well, I think that if she cannot raise money, she can't do what's necessary for the party. So I think the party has to recognize that in the event that she can't raise money, she can't do the primary job, and there won't be any money available to help support the candidates. So then you're failing as the head of the RNC.
So do you think Nikki Haley has a shot at beating Donald Trump?
No, not at all. I think that it's completely hopeless, but maybe she wants to continue to promote her name or whatever. There's some reason. But when you look at the numbers, you can see they are nowhere near touching Donald Trump. I think the latest poll, he's 52% in Iowa, and he's over that in New Hampshire. So when you take a look at the numbers, no one is going to beat Donald Trump.
Have you taken a look at the U.S. Senate race here in Michigan, and do you have a favorite among the candidates? I think we got like 11 Republicans at this point.
Yeah, no, I haven't had a chance. Yeah, no. At this stage of the game, it's kind of premature. I can't say that I have a favorite right now. I have to see what the policies are. I don't even think we've gotten the message out. We don't even know where everybody stands. We do know one thing, that this is probably one of the most important races for the Senate that we've had in a number of years.
But if Karamo isn't able to raise money, that's going to hurt whoever the Republican nominee is, isn't it?
Without a doubt. You need a tremendous amount of money. I would suggest that in order to be able to win this race, somebody's going to have to spend well over $100 million.
Have you donated any money to the Republican Party since Christina Karamo took over?
I don't know, probably. It's hard to say. I've spent so much money. I think I spent $16 million in the last race, so I may very well have donated some money to the Republican Party. Maybe I've donated to various causes, maybe 100,000 or so, maybe a little more than that.
Surely there must be fun things to spend money on. What do you say to people who ask why you keep running for, these prestigious executive roles when I presume you could be on a yacht somewhere?
Yeah. Well, I don't know how to say this, but I don't think there's anything quite like running for president. It really is remarkable because you get an opportunity to see what the people really think, and you're busy all the time. I mean, you literally are face to face. It is retail politics in Iowa and New Hampshire. They changed the race substantially when they put in this requirement that you had to have a certain percentage nationally. And it's really almost kind of nutty. Advertising in California. Think about how silly this is. You're advertising in California when the Republicans know they're not going to win California. And then on top of that, in California, they're not even making a decision to vote for over a year down the road. And in politics, people have very short memories. So it makes no sense financially to do anything like this. But we were kind of coerced to do it just because they had new requirements that were never laid out before in order to get on the debate stage. This is the first time the Republicans have ever done anything like this.
Mr. Johnson, is John Yob still on your payroll?
No, John is not on my payroll right now.
Will he be soon?
I don't know. We'll have to see. I think he's testifying in court next week.
He is testifying? Why?
That's because they're prosecuting the forgery campaign. When you understand how it worked, the candidates, the 5 candidates, they didn't even hire the petitioners. At least I certainly didn't. You don't even know who these guys are, and you don't even know who the companies are. You have a consultant, and the consultant is the one that goes out and hires these people to collect the names. And John Yob is the person that did that, and he was my consultant, and he's going to testify because it really damages the entire election process. And it certainly is devastating to our whole way of life if we want to continue running a democracy. So they are going on trial next week.
And what is Mr. Yob going to say? That they were crooks?
Well, they were. I don't think there's any question on that.
Do you think they should go to prison, Mr. Johnson?
They probably will.
And do you think they should have? Or they should go to prison?
Yeah, I think when you do something like that, it's devastating. I mean, if we had that kind of corruption going on, it'd be very hard to continue to run our democracy. I mean, this is brutal. So we have a republic here, and in this republic, we certainly are going to have a certain amount of trust. You can't have a situation where you have this kind of scheming going on. It's devastating. Let's suppose hypothetically that we have all corrupt people all over, and you just go and you try to get signatures and somebody forges somebody else's signature. This can't be trusted. I mean, this can't be a system that we can allow. And to do that deliberately and to go and get involved in an election to try to change things like that, I think that's pretty severe.
Mr. Johnson, did you have fun riding on the tractor out in Iowa?
I did.
You do anything you have to, right?
Well, it was fun. I mean, everything that happened there was a great experience. I really loved it. I had a chance to have my son with me, my wife with me, my oldest son was with me all the time. I had all my boys out there at some point or other. And when I say that it's really wonderful to get out there and talk to the people and see what really concerns them, it truly is.
Okay, you'll call me on the governor thing, right?
The governor thing, I will, yes. You know, I loved running for governor too. It was fun. I mean, it was just a devastating result that was shocking to me.
I got to get out of here. I got to get out. Mr. Johnson, thanks for being on the program. We'll talk to you later, okay?
In the meantime, enjoy life and Happy New Year.
Yes, back to you. See you guys next week right here for more Off the Record.
Production of Off the Record is made possible in part by Martin Waymeyer, a full-service strategic communications agency, partnering with clients through public relations, digital marketing, and public policy engagement. Learn more at martinwaymeyer.com. For more Off the Record, visit WKAR.org. Michigan Public Television stations have contributed to the production costs of Off the Record.